Thank you for attending, and thank you for your continued interest in OKI. Uh, My name is Bob Kaler. I think most of you know me, but if not, I'm the Deputy Executive Director here at OKI. And today you're here to experience the workshop, which we have annually. It's where we try to explain how you can set your project applications up to be the best they can and win, hopefully, our capital funds. STBG, SNK, and TA, included in that subset of repaving funds or STBG funds. So we have a number of presenters here, and let's get started. All right, here's the agenda. There was a printed copy in the back of the room where you signed in. So if you didn't get one, you'll be okay. You'll be able to follow along. Here's what I plan to cover. We're going to talk about those four programs that I mentioned, the general conditions that you need to meet, the funding that we have available, review the scoring factors, review the application, and lay out the schedule. This is more of a reminder. Last year, we introduced the history of project delivery element that said we would not award new funding to any applicant that has 3 or more OKI funded projects that have slipped past their original program construction year. Can still apply because there's a little bit of a grace period between the application deadline and September 1st, where if you are able to finally get your project over the finish line, we'll reconsider that and consider it not late. I'll cover the max awards in a little bit. And backed by popular demand is the repaving program with a little bit of a change there, but we'll get into that too. Continuing with general conditions. Wade?
Yeah, it's a quick question on your last point about September 1. Just to clarify, is that having the project out to bid for construction, or is there a different milestone you're looking for to be in good graces?
That's having the project obligated in ODOT's system.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, for us, obligation is a key milestone because that means the feds have officially put those funds aside for that project, and they're relatively safe unless the whole program comes crashing down, which has never happened in my tenure here at OKI. Here are the eligible applicants: area development districts, cities, counties, townships, transit authorities, port authorities, TIDs, and other units of government eligible to sign contracts with KYTC or ODOT. Basic eligibility comes with all the projects. In an optimal world, projects start in the 2050 plan, but there are also a number of projects that are consistent with the plan, so those would be eligible too. They're located, SNK and STBG funds need to be located within the urban boundary. Repaving and TA can be anywhere in the OKI region. Roadway projects must be on the functional class as a collector or higher. In other words, no local streets, no local roads. There is always going to be match requirements. Some programs like repaving, we were able to bring toll revenue credits in Ohio, but everything else will have a minimum of 20% match. And you can do better if you bring more match. And recall that the process is a reimbursement program arrangement. You need to expend the funds, get an invoice to ODOT KYTC, and get your 80% back or whatever the match ratio is. So you have to have the resources to be able to carry a project. And there you see in the last 3 lines, the maximum number of applications per LPA. For Ohio STBG or Kentucky SNK is 2. You can have 1 per LPA for TA and 1 per LPA for repaving. 211. Here's the current extent of the urban boundary. As I mentioned, STBG and SNK are limited to those colored areas. You can find this information in the project application assistant. And there are check boxes on the screen. When you go in there, you can turn on different things. One of those is urban boundary. Another is functional class. Another is impact zones, which used to be called EJ. Another thing in our transit routes, so on and so forth. Okay, a lot of rows, a lot of columns here. I'll go slowly so you can kind of know where we're headed with this program. Not as much funding as last year, because last year we had a significant amount of CMAQ in Ohio. This year, that's an every other year program. So we're a little bit lower this year, but still pretty high. For Ohio STBG, 44 million. The repaving is half of what we had last year. It's down to 5 million because we're catching up on projects in our reserve. TA, 4.2 million. SNK, we have 8 million. A repaving in Kentucky is 2 million. And the Kentucky TA program, 2.2 million. And in that second to last column, you see the maximum per application, 6 million, 800,000, 1 million, 5 million, 800,000, and then finally TA, 650,000. Here's a list of, not exhaustive, but for the most part, what we've seen in a long time are the range of projects that we'll cover include widening or new roadways, reconstruction, signalization, access management, safety improvements, transit capital, bike ped, intermodal, and freight facilities. And a little bit about the process itself before we get into the actual factors. This is the STBG SNK prioritization process. It has essentially two parts. First is the modal portion. See roadway transit, bike ped, and non-roadway freight. Then you bring in the planning factors, a number of elements, and you'll hear those discussed in a little bit. You take the scores from all those, you add them together, and you get the total scores. Okay, here are the transportation factors for roadway projects. Those with the red asterisk are elements that you can get data from the project application assistant, safety, traffic, travel time, freight, and pavement and bridge ratings are all available through the PAA. The others are subjective, and we ask that you do your best to put your project in a good light, but it's the most honest light as well. Each of the elements are worth up to 5 points. Any questions on those? Transportation factors for roadway projects. I failed to mention in the previous slide, complete streets is one of those elements worth 5 points. And what we're asking for here, or requiring here actually, is that you consider elements of the complete street process when you do your roadway projects. But we realize that there are conditions that just don't allow for having all modes on a roadway. We understand that. And if you have an exception, we're okay with that. Just need to tell us what that exception is based on. Any or one or more of these 7 items would fulfill that. For example, we're not going to make you build sidewalks on roads that people don't walk on, or there's no evidence that they want to walk on. And I'm going to make you put a side path on somewhere where you are illegal or not legally allowed to put a side path on, or where the cost is just too much. It's just, not worth it. We have to find other ways to serve modes. But anyway, we're trying to expand our system and make it more complete, but we understand there are limits. Here's a screenshot of the project applicant assistant for roadways. It's a map you can scroll around and click on links, and it goes to our databases and extracts the data and reports it in a series of cells there on the left part of the screen. I'm not going to launch that because bad things always happen to me when you try to launch a website live in front of the room. So anyway, that's the PAA. Very useful. And in fact, I use it a lot for just everyday stuff. What's the count on that road? What is this on that road? What's the functional class? So a useful tool outside the application process. All right, moving on to transportation factors for transit projects. And there are 5 categories here, and they're all somewhat equally weighted, except for the impact on safety and security. That something had to give there, so that's worth 5. Everything else is worth 10 points. And you can see that we really value things that have a broader impact, like a regional scope is good. Things that drive up ridership are good. So we've been through this before, so I won't go much deeper than that, but there are the transportation factors for transit projects. Question, yes, Andrea.
I know, and it says ridership impact is subjective.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Impact is subjective, and it is, but what are you judging that on?
The question is, how do you judge the ridership impact? Well, I guess I have to use an example. If a transit agency was going to double the frequency, ask for new buses so they could double the frequency on a particular route that shows high demand, they might say that's a high impact on ridership, and I would tend to agree. If they are on a route that exhibits low ridership and they say putting this new bus out there instead of a okay bus is going to impact ridership high, I would probably argue that that's not the case. It probably would be medium or low. It's a team effort when we evaluate those, and we hope the applicant is straightforward, gives us the information for us to make a good decision on that. Okay, bike ped. Several categories here, 7 to be exact. We're looking for things like crashes, how the project impacts safety. For example, you could probably get a high impact if you get pedestrians out of the roadway and build them a sidewalk. That would be, a nice, good safety improvement if you see a lot of people walking on the side of the road. Network connections. For some reason, this seems to be challenging. We have an appendix in the application and the guidance document that shows what we consider the regional trails system. And those aren't articulated, but those, I don't know, some are 6 or 8 different regional trail networks are in that list. So if you tell us it's this one and it's on the list, you get a 5 for that. It's on the regional network. If it's a connection to that network, you get fewer points. If it's just a local sidewalk or a local side path, then it would be local and receive the lowest number of points. Feasibility, existing surface conditions. We're going to have to trust you on that. If it's all beat up and we happen to know it's all beat up, then it would be poor, so we get a lot of points. Complete streets. There we're looking for modes added or improved. So if you're adding a sidewalk to connect to a bus stop, that would be an improvement there. So that would be worth some points. And then the project status, where is it in the project development process? If it's just ready for construction, that's really good and scores high. If it's just an idea, first stab at the project, probably would score very low. Non-roadway freight. The non-roadway freight is, we're looking for really the impact it has on our roadway system, on congestion more specifically. The premier factor is impact on roadway congestion. As I mentioned, it's worth 10 points. We added last year 2 elements, impact on safety and quality of life factors. And I think they're self-explanatory. We haven't had a direct rate application in a couple of years, though we have been successful in delivering a couple of Christie projects, thanks to Robin Bancroft's work, but that was outside of this process. But if you have them, feel free to come forward with them. All right, so I'm going to pause there and hand it off to Andy Reeser. He's going to talk about the planning factors for those.
Yep. So Bob talked about the modal specific factors. I want to talk about the factors that apply to all the projects. And here's a list of them here. So I'll start with the air quality factor, air quality energy factor, cost effectiveness. So the project may receive points if it contributes to the reduction of vehicle miles traveled, vehicle hours traveled, or results in cleaner vehicle emissions. So we do that by just categorizing it into strong, mixed, weak, or no impact. So the best would get 5 points. And there's a little chart here that kind of guides you through what our thought process would be. And this is based on an EPA study a while back on cost effectiveness of CMAQ type projects, but we're going to use this for both STBG, SNK, and anything that could be CMAQ eligible as well. Next factor is intermodal elements factor, worth up to 5 points. It looks at new and direct connections between modes, for example, between barge and rail, or roadway to port, or a new pedestrian connection to transit. So here's one example where a project adds a conveyance system to offload barge freight directly to rail. This would be a new connection from barge to rail and would score 3 points. Here's a second example with a project that adds a multi-use path, but it adds a new connection between 3 modes here, bike, walk, and transit, and would score the most. It would score 5 points in this example. Next factor is replacement expansion factor, worth up to 5 points. The plan, or OKI's 2050 plan, puts an emphasis on maintaining existing infrastructure, and the range of points available depends on the nature of the project. So 100% replacement would get 5 points. 75% replacement would get 4 points, 50% 3, 25% 2. If it's entirely expansion, it would get 0 points under this factor. Local share or local match. We do require 20% local match for everything except for the Ohio repaving program, which you don't have to provide any match for that program. But if we just provide the minimum for the others, you would get 0 points. Additional points would be awarded for applications that pledge more than the minimum local match. So as I said, 20% would get 0. You'd have to go up to 25% match, 25 to 29% match would get 1 point. If you went all the way up to 40%, you get 6 points, 50% would be the max, and that's 10 points if you provide a 50% or above local match. And then technology, this encourages the implementation of new technologies, automation, and advanced materials in transportation. We do have some examples in the guidance document if you want to read a little bit further. Examples are for equipment, connected vehicles, autonomous vehicles, optimized systems like signal systems, advanced materials. All modes can get some technology points here, but as a note, they need to be included in the cost estimate. We need to see those in there in order to get credit for any points under the technology factor. And history of project delivery. So applicant who has had one OKI funded project slip to a later year will be penalized -3 points. If you have 2 or more projects slipped, it will be -5 points. And if you have a canceled project, you'll get assessed a 10-point penalty under this factor. Applicants who have had 3 or more projects slip to a later year will not be eligible for this funding cycle. And we do take kind of a snapshot on or around September 1st and look at what that applicant previous OKI funded projects and look at those and see what the status of those projects are in order to evaluate this factor. That's all I have. I'll turn it over to Julia to talk about the community impact factor.
Good morning. I'm Julia Brassert with Communications and Legislative Affairs here at OKI, and I staff the Community Advisory Committee. This was formerly the EJ Committee. The Community Advisory Committee is the one who scores the community impact factor, which can be up to 10 points. And what the committee is looking for is the overall impact, negative or positive, direct or indirect, even temporary or permanent, to the designated communities. Now, the communities we're looking at are areas where the percent of population exceeds 50% of the regional average and has more than 250 individuals, those folks being low income, zero car households, the elderly, or persons with disability. Those are the communities, ELDO, if you want to think of it that way to remember it. So what does this really mean? Some examples of impacts. When you're working around the ELDO communities, will there be any relocations? Will there be a change in access? Again, that might be temporary, it might be permanent. Will there be issues that could result in a disproportionately high or negative impact? Has this been raised during your public involvement process? And also any other unique factors that could pose a disproportionately high or negative impact. What you're really looking to do here is use this factor to talk about where you have communicated and mitigated regarding this project. I would encourage you, even if you are not in, this project is not in an ELDO community specifically, if you are impacting those communities, this project is near a senior center, this project is in an area, where we're trying to grow out for the growing elderly population. Note your communication plans for the project in these areas. And with that, I will turn it over to Andy Meyer.
Morning, Andy Meyer, Senior Planner in the Regional Planning Department here at OKI, and I will be covering slides related to economic vitality, concurrence with the SRPP, and local planning. So first up, economic vitality. There are 5 points associated with existing employment. This is something that we score at OKI. You don't have to do anything, but we look at a half-mile buffer around the project and how many people are employed within that buffer area. The more employment in that area, the higher the points. In addition, there's a 5-point bonus associated with new investment or new employment within that same buffer area. And this is an area that I think applicants should pay particular attention to. It's something that, at least in the components that I review on your applications, I see a lot of applicants miss points or not put the effort into it. So what we're looking for is a documented new investment or new employment within the project area. So documented in a media article, in a zoning or building application, something like that, of a new investment. And based on the amount of new investment or the number of new employees that are expected to be created by the private sector project, we would assign up to 5 bonus points. So talk to your economic development folks, talk to your planning folks, find out what's going on within your project areas, so you can provide us the documentation, we can assign the points that your project deserves. A lot of applicants just put in flowery language about this project will support economic development or support existing businesses in the area. We can't score on this if we don't have a documented project with numbers associated with it. This just shows a zoom in of the buffer tool that we use to find the employment numbers. Next, the strategic regional policy plan. This area is worth 5 points. There are six questions on the application, talking about what is the relationship of the project to an urban area of mixed use or a downtown area, different things. So it's pretty straightforward. They've been on the application for quite a while, so everybody's pretty used to these questions. So these are the areas or the question, more information about the questions. In an area of mixed use or town center, projects serving brownfield, grayfield properties, and projects located along functionally classified collector, and looking at the built environment surrounding that corridor and matching it up with one of these transects in the image here on the right. Local planning. So this is an area where the scoring criteria has kind of changed the last few years. We are now settled, and hopefully it is settled, on a 4-tier scale. Again, this is a 5-point category. To get 5 points, we are looking for a community with a comprehensive plan or equivalent plan, and I'll get into the definitions of what an equivalent plan is, that is equal to or less than 5 years old, so kept up to date, and aligns with the specific implementation activities in the plan. So your project is part of a activity and specific, activity or project that's listed in the plan. That gets 5 points. 4 points is all of the above, comprehensive or equivalent plan. The plan is up to date, but your project does not align with any of the specific implementation activities listed in the plan. It might support an overall goal of increasing pedestrian connectivity, but there isn't a specific action called out in the plan that aligns with the improvement you're applying for funds for. 2 points is a community that has a comprehensive plan, but the plan is not up to date. And 0 points if the project is clearly inconsistent with the local plan or no plan exists. We, very rarely in the last 10 years, probably only 2 or 3 times, we've had a project that is inconsistent with the plan. I want to talk about equivalent plans. So communities have or should have a comprehensive plan, but sometimes that comprehensive plan doesn't have the detail that aligns with your project, or perhaps the comprehensive plan is a little older, but you have a more detailed or focused plan that addresses the area or the project where the project is in. So we can also accept thoroughfare plans, corridor studies, small area plans, trail or pedestrian connectivity plans as equivalent plans to the comprehensive plans, or even addendums to the comprehensive plan, so long as that plan meets all the content criteria of the comprehensive plan. So a link between land use and transportation, and also includes significant public engagement during the creation of the plan. And the last thing on this slide, routine maintenance. So if you're applying for a maintenance project, we will assign the points for the local planning factor commensurate with your the community's comprehensive plan situation. So if you have an up-to-date comprehensive plan and you're applying for a maintenance project, you get 5 points. If you have a comprehensive plan but it's not up to date, you get 2 points. So in the application, there is a series of questions or points to fill in, information about your comprehensive plan or equivalent plan that you're referencing. Please fill that in. You don't have to be too wordy about it, but just some basic information of what's the plan title, when was it adopted, what pages are the important to reference with the project. And it is also helpful to include a PDF of the plan or select those pages and include those pages. All right, and the last thing I will cover is resiliency factor. This is relatively new. Last year was the first time we had this resiliency factor. Prior to that, we included resiliency within the SRPP scoring criteria. But this addresses how well your projects address any flood or landslide risks. So it's some relatively straightforward questions, criteria, but we're looking for, so if yes, it starts off with a yes, no. Is there a flooding risk or a landslide risk within the area of your project? If that's yes, you get 5 points if the project is elevating the roadway or facility above the 500-year floodplain, or if the project is in a landslide susceptibility index of 1 to 3 and designed to withstand slippage or protect from further slippage. 3 points is if you're in a floodplain and the design armors it to sustain a flooding event, but doesn't raise it above the flood level, or is in a landslide susceptibility index of 4 to 5, so minor landslide susceptibility and designed to withstand slippage. Negative 5 points is if you're in a floodplain or slippage and you're not doing anything to address it. But there's a note, multi-use trails are excluded from this deduction because typically you can put trails in floodplains and they're fine. If your project is not in a flood or landslide areas, you can still get points. You get 5 points if the project includes nature-based solutions, so bioswales, rain gardens, things like that, to address water, stormwater runoff. Or if the project design is beyond state and local compliance requirements. You can also get 5 points if the project addresses a specific need identified in your county hazard mitigation plan. So if you look at your county mitigation plan. You can incorporate a need that's identified in there within the project. You can earn 5 points here. Okay, and I'm turning it over to Summer.
Moving on, TA Transportation Alternatives. It's a subset of STBG funds, not as rich, but still as important. As previously mentioned, Ohio TA has about 4.2 million available and Kentucky TA has about 2.2 million available. So we don't have as much money as STBG, but still very, very important projects can be funded with these funds. There are 5 factors for TA. The first is project type. That's pretty self-explanatory. What are you applying for? Is it a sidewalk, lighting, calming, traffic calming, multi-use path? The next one is safety, and please explain how this project will improve safety. The existing safety problem must be documented along with plans for addressing those problems. It is a 10-point scale. The high positive impact will get 10 points, medium 8, low 2, and no impact at all on safety will receive 0 points. Then we have the network component, same as the STBG bike and ped section of that. We give priority to projects that make regional connections. If you're connecting to a regional network, that's 6 points. If it is a regional network, that's 10. And if it's a local network component, that's 4. And again, as Andy mentioned, there is an appendix that lists all of the regional networks. So please use that appendix. And the next one's project status, same as STBG. You get more points the further along you are in the project and closer to construction. So you take those 5 factors, add those up, you have 45 points. You add those up against the all planning factors that Andy Meyer and Andy Reeser just reviewed, 60 points. Then the total score, you have 105 points. I would like to make a note just of what Andy said about the technology factor. Don't forget that, especially with the bike ped projects, it's so easy to just earn a couple extra points for technology if you put a bike trail counter on there. It's a low cost and it provides valuable information and it's going to score you extra points. So if you're looking at a trail project, please consider putting a bike trail counter and including that in your cost estimate. Here are network connections. This is an appendix in the guidance. You'll see them all here. If you disagree with any of them or feel one should be added, please give me a call. These are the same planning factors for TA as the STBG. You'll see here, they're all the same 9 factors. They're all the same that we've already all discussed, so I'm not going to go over them again. And here's the air quality effectiveness. Andy mentioned this. This is different than the one for STBG. His is worth 10, mine is worth a total of 5, so they are different. But again, this is in the appendix. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Bob for the repaving program, which was so popular this year, and which is why you probably are all sticking around this long.
All right, thank you, Summer. Yeah, backed by popular demand, the repaving program. I mentioned earlier that we don't have quite as much available this year, but we still do have 5 million in Ohio and 2 million in Kentucky. If you're an Ohio locality, we're bringing toll revenue credits to the table, so that's very good news for you. These are meant to be simple mill and fill type projects. We'll cover pavement markers, the construction itself, the maintenance of traffic, and but you can only apply one time for one roadway. We do allow you to include a contingency for unforeseen base repairs. However, if your curb ramps are not ADA compliant, you'll be responsible for improving those. The projects must be on a functionally classified route that's collector or higher. Again, no local routes. And I do want to mention that we're in a state of transition here in regards to the functional class Every 10 years following the census, the US DOT or Federal Highway Administration more specifically asks and completes a review of the functional class system. And we've done our part and submitted those to our state partners. They've done their part and submitted to the feds. I think the feds have signed off on, I know they approved Ohio and I think Kentucky as well. What we're waiting on from the states is an integrated data set so that we can download that and put that in our PAA. So we have some changes. There are some routes that have been cut off and you would probably call them stubs or, local routes for sure. And those will fall off. So be careful when you're looking at routes for those programs, STBG and the repaving program. If you have any questions, let me know. We'll dig through our files to get you the latest. 99.9% of routes won't be impacted, but there will be some that are impacted. You probably know those already anyhow, but just be aware of that. Okay, the process is competitive, just like the other programs, has the modal and has the planning factors. It's just more abbreviated. It's only worth 50 points total, 40 from the mode and 10 from the planning factors. And I will show you what those are. There are 4 elements on the repaving side: functional class, the volume of traffic on an ADT basis, the existing conditions, and if it's on a fixed route transit route, you can earn some points there. So pretty straightforward. The scale does optimize at 10,000 or over, between 10 and 15,000. The point there was to have regional impacts, but also have roads that are important to the communities at the same time. So it's set up to be optimized at collectors at between 10 and 15,000. The planning factors is the next criteria. History of project delivery. It's the same as the other projects, the other programs. So negative points for not delivering your projects or letting them slip or cancel. And then the community impacts, that is scored by the Community Advisory Committee and involves all the things that Julia mentioned earlier. So won't go into those any deeper than that. If you've been through the process before, the application is still the same. It's an Excel spreadsheet. We need you to be complete with your contact information, information about the project's goals, the cost estimates by phase, certifications, all the factors, of course. And you can have attachments, and you likely will, for an area map and a cost estimate. When you're making your maps, try to compress them. If you don't know how to do that, talk to your IT or GIS people. They can. We hate getting maps that are 10 megabytes large, and it really bogs down our system, and probably yours as well. So there are ways to compress those. Excuse me. Other considerations. Construction phase. For most of the program, it's fiscal year 30. For repaving, it's fiscal year 28. So we're moving those. They should be able to move more rapidly. They still have to have environmental documents and design forms and all the other things that are associated with every other federal project, but they should be more simplified. Should be able to go more quickly. We cap our funds at the time of the award, and sometimes and often we get requests for additional funds. If we have it, we can. You can apply for a one-time 10% increase in that level, that amount. And the way things are going, just plan ahead and do your best estimates. Things to think about when you're doing those cost estimates. You have to do the environmental document. You'll have to pay for right-of-way services. Detailed design environment are not eligible in Ohio for our funds. Right-of-way cost will be cost of the borne to the project. They are. We do cover those. The plans must meet ODOT and KYTC standards. They will charge an inspection fee construction engineering fee, if you will. And eventually you'll have to work closely with your district office at Kentucky and Ohio. So don't forget that. And I want to explain for those of you that are new to the process, there are two ways to go when you are selected for funding from OKI. You can do, and this I think pertains to both states, but in Ohio, you can go local let or ODOT let. And the ODOT is looking for communities that have experience before they'll allow them to go local let. Otherwise, you may have to go through the ODOT let process. And you see the differences in the columns there. If you go local let, you have a little bit more control, both in terms of funding or cost reimbursements. You can do those as those expenses are incurred. If you go to the ODOT let, you have to front the money and put it in reserve with ODOT. ODOT will control the schedule. ODOT will do the inspection and then charge you fees for that. Those are similar to fees you'll have anyway if you have to pay staff or a consultant, but just be aware that it's just handled slightly differently.
I could add to that, Bob.
Yeah,
Like in
sure.
Kentucky, it's more like local let primarily. Is that right, Dean? That's how you characterize it. And a couple other things I wanted to add is that you are certainly allowed to apply for CMAQ type projects during this round. They get scored exactly the same. In fact, you might get more points in the air quality factor for a CMAQ type project. And later on, if you do apply and get awarded, that could be later on, we'll convert that to CMAQ funds instead of STBG funds. So I just wanted to say, I don't want to discourage you from applying for CMAQ type projects. One thing about the cost estimate, it is in current year dollars, so we would like to see it in 2026 dollars. There is a inflation factor built into the spreadsheet in the application, which is based on the ODOT cost calculator. It escalates the cost for FY30. I believe the factor is 1.16. It increases the cost. And you are allowed a 10% contingency as long as it's itemized in the cost estimate. You can put that in there. And the new guidance and the new applications are live this morning, so you could go on our website and find those today.
And this presentation on our website as well.
Yeah, Andrea.
For instance, ODOT. Oh, yeah, with ODOT project award, then you put your local fees on deposit. Technically, that's sale. We bill you before we advertise.
I couldn't hear you.
It's hard to hear you when you're facing the other direction. Sorry.
Speakers up here. With the 1, 2, 3rd bullet under ODOT lead. That's for your deposit before we sell, before we advertise.
Before advertisement, your money has to be in.
If they're high, we're going to ask you for the rest of it, but we ask you for your deposit before we advertise.
Before advertisement, not before award. Well, yeah, they would both be before award, but even earlier than that. Before you, yeah, a month earlier. Okay, thank you. So you have to have cash on hand if you're going to go ODOT let. But they handle a lot of the headaches for you. And it's always delivered well. So there are certainly many advantages to going ODOT let. All right, so moving on, just a couple slides left. Here's the schedule. Today's March 10th. As Andy mentioned, things are going live today. The applications are due. It's always the first Friday in June by 4 o'clock. Andy will be waiting anxiously until 4:01 before he gets to call it a day. The Community Advisory Committee will get together in July. No date set for that yet. In September, we'll review those with you all and let it sit for a month and make sure we got it right, and come back in October and ask for you all to recommend approval of the list of projects that we've selected as a unified effort. And then the board will take action in October. And next spring, well, the repaving will try to get in the tip in November. And in the spring, we'll put the other projects in the TIP. One thing I want to add that for several years, well, we've always been proud of the role we've played as staff, but you guys do the very important project part of delivering the actual project. And we certainly commend you all for doing that. We do ask that when you advertise, hey, we got money for this project ABC, that you let the public know that OKI was partnering in this. And then please invite us to your groundbreakings or ribbon cutting events so we can share in your successes. It's nice for us to feel part of that next step as well. So we're proud of the work we've done. We want to continue that relationship and celebrate your successes as they occur down the road. So try to keep that in mind if you don't mind. So if you have questions, call one of these two folks here, Andy and Summer. They can help you. They're active. They get project questions all the time, and they are the experts in those funding categories. So please contact them. So I think that's it. Any questions to wrap this up before we wrap it up? Dan?
For Andy, Andy, you were talking about CMAQ. I missed the first part of what you were saying. Is CMAQ part of the funding this round? It's not, correct?
So I'll clarify what Bob said. There is CMAQ funding included in this round. So, and it gets scored the same. So
There's two
I included it.
applications.
So I included it in that 44 million you see for STBG. There's CMAQ dollars in that as well. We get a lot less CMAQ than we do STBG. We get around 10 million or so a year, but what's left over CMAQ is included in that total.
When an applicant is applying for up to 2 applications within that, and OKI staff are figuring out which pool is better applicable to that application.
Yeah, it helps us to have a project that's eligible for multiple funding sources, and then we can kind of move things around to utilize all available funds. Yep.
Question over here.
Hi, I'm Amy Stewart. I'm from the new City of Florence Transportation Improvement District. I'm the project manager. Based on my review of the Kentucky statutes, we can exist, but there's not like a special avenue for us to use for applications. Would we just stand in the place of the city or use the city avenue for funding applications through Kentucky? And then I have a bunch of other questions, which I can ask later.
Well, I'm no lawyer, but if a TID is officially recognized under the Kentucky revised statutes, I believe you should be able to make application to OKI for funding. If you're set up to receive funds and contract with KYTC, I think we probably have a path forward.
I don't know that KYTC says anything at all about TIDs yet, so that's.
Well, that's why I said I'm not a lawyer, so. In Ohio, TIDs are recognized, and they have been recognized, and they've been active for many, many years. And so they have been eligible applicants for OKI funds. If KYTC is not recognizing the TID, then you need to settle that question first. We should talk after the meeting. I have some thoughts on this.
Any other questions? Not seeing any, Bob.
All right, since Rusty Sherman's not here, Dan Corey's our leading expert on TIDs. He may want to stick around. Anyway, he's very busy, so. Do you know Dan? Okay. All right, with that, we'll call it adjourned.